Some men discover affairs through lipstick on collars or mysterious phone calls. I discovered mine through an ancient VCR and a woman's laughter. She hadn't laughed like that with me in years, free, young, alive. But there she was on that tape, in another man's arms in our Legion Hall, making plans for tomorrow while I sat at home, oblivious. The man holding her had power, connections, and apparently my wife's heart. What he didn't have was a husband with 40 years of firefighting experience who knew exactly how to control a burn. By the time I was finished, their secret affair would cost them everything. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The morning light slanted through the dusty windows of American Legion Post 143, painting long shadows across the scuffed hardwood floor. I'd been coming here at dawn for 15 years, long before most folks in town even thought about their first cup of coffee. Old habits die hard, I suppose, especially for an old fire chief who'd spent 40 years waking before the sun. My name is Ray Hightower, and at 70, I'd learned that routine was what kept a man steady. Check the locks, empty the trash, wipe down the bar, vacuum the banquet hall, same dance every morning after an event. Last night's charity gala had run late the Rotary Club raising money for the Children's Hospital, and the cleanup crew had left around 2 in the morning. The security system in the Legion Hall was older than dirt, just like me. A vintage VCR hooked up to a single camera that watched over the main room and occasionally caught glimpses of the back storage area when the door swung open. The tape only held 8 hours, so I had to swap it out regular-like. Most days, I'd just toss the old tape back in the rotation without a second thought. But something made me pause that morning. Maybe it was the way the storage room door stood slightly ajar, or how one of the folding tables had been moved. Little things that didn't sit right. In my firefighting days, we called it situational awareness, that tickle in your brain that said something was off. I ejected the tape from the machine, its mechanical whir echoing in the empty hall. The thing was probably 20 years old, held together with electrical tape and prayers. I walked to the small office behind the bar, where we kept an old TV VCR combo for reviewing footage when needed. Usually that meant checking if someone had left their wallet or seeing who'd knocked over the coat rack. The grainy black and white footage flickered to life. Fast forward through the cleanup, people filing out, lights dimming. Then, at 12:17 a.m., according to the timestamp, movement in the storage room. My finger found the play button. 2 figures emerged from the shadows between the stacked chairs and boxes of decorations. The camera angle wasn't great, but I knew that walk anywhere, Joni, my wife of 35 years, her distinctive sway unmistakable even in the fuzzy footage. The man with her was younger, broader in the shoulders. When he turned toward the light streaming in from the hallway, I recognized Colby Tate, the city's Parks and Recreation Director. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a steel band around it and started turning the screw. They weren't just talking. Colby's hands rested on Joni's waist with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. She laughed, that throaty laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years, and leaned into him. The way lovers do. The way we used to, back when our marriage meant something more than shared bills and separate bedrooms. Jesus Christ, I muttered, my voice cracking in the empty office. I rewound the tape, watched again, then again. Each viewing was like pressing on a bruise, painful, but somehow necessary. The third time through, I cranked up the volume on the old mono speaker. Their voices were faint, muffled by distance and the ancient equipment. Same key tomorrow? Joni's voice, barely audible but unmistakably hers. Colby nodded, his hand sliding down to the small of her back. Same time. I'll park out back. The kiss that followed wasn't some accident, no moment of weakness. It was practiced, comfortable. How long? How many times had they met like this, using my hall as their personal playground? My hands shook as I ejected the tape. The plastic case felt like evidence at a crime scene, which I suppose it was. Evidence of the murder of a marriage, the assassination of trust. Dawn light was painting the walls orange by the time I locked up the Legion Hall. The VHS tape sat heavy in my jacket pocket. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye on the table near the door. Joni's key ring, the one with the little lighthouse charm I'd bought her on our anniversary trip to Maine, back when we still took trips together. I picked it up, noting immediately what was missing. The Legion Hall master key. The one she'd borrowed months ago to help set up for some event and never returned. The one I'd forgotten to ask for back because why would I? She was my wife. I trusted her. Fool, I thought, pocketing her keys too. The drive home took 7 minutes. I knew because I counted every second trying to decide what to do. Confront her? Throw Colby through a wall? Pack my things and leave? No. None of that felt right. In my firefighting days, we had a saying, never run into a burning building without a plan. This was no different. Joni had planned her betrayal carefully, methodically. She deserved the same consideration in return. I pulled into our driveway, the house we'd bought together in 1994, where we'd raised our daughters, where I'd thought we'd grow old together. Joni's car was there, and I could see the kitchen light on. She was probably making coffee, humming to herself, thinking her secret was safe. I sat in my truck for a long moment, feeling the weight of the tape in my pocket. Tomorrow they planned to meet again. Same key, same time. Well, Joni, I thought, you're not the only one who can make plans. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together in that storage room, saw the casual intimacy of that kiss. Joni had come to bed around 11, smelling of lavender soap and lies. She'd murmured goodnight and turned away, same as she had for the past 5 years. I'd laid there rigid as a board, fighting the urge to confront her right then and there. But no, I needed to think, needed allies. By 5:30 the next morning, I was pulling into the gravel lot of Cora's diner. The old neon sign flickered in the pre-dawn darkness. Sira's Diener, it read, vowels long since burned out. Cora Mae Jensen had been saying she'd fix that sign for 10 years now, but we all knew she never would. Some things were better broken, she'd say, gave them character. The bell above the door chimed as I pushed inside. The familiar smell of bacon grease and strong coffee wrapped around me like an old blanket. Cora looked up from behind the counter where she was filling salt shakers, her gray hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn since her husband died 8 years back. "Ray Hightower," she said, eyeing me with those sharp blue eyes that didn't miss much. "You look like you've been rode hard and put up wet. Coffee? Make it black and keep it coming." She poured, then leaned against the counter studying me. We'd known each other 40 years, ever since her late husband Carl and I had served together in the Guard. She could read me like a book. "Spill it," she said simply. I looked around the empty diner we had maybe 20 minutes before the early birds started showing up. Then I told her everything, the tape, the kiss, the keys, the planned meeting tonight. My voice stayed steady, but my hands shook so bad I had to put the coffee cup down. Cora's face went through a series of expressions, shock, anger, then something harder, protective. She came around the counter and sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "That little bitch," she said quietly, and somehow the profanity from proper Cora Mae made it more real. "And with Colby Tate? That ambitious little weasel who wouldn't know ethics if they bit him in the ass?" Despite everything, I almost smiled. "Tell me how you really feel, Cora." "What are you going to do?" she asked. I stared into my coffee, seeing my haggard reflection in the black surface. "I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to burn it all down. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw that tape." "Bullshit," Cora said firmly. "Ray Hightower doesn't pretend. You're a fighter." "Always have been." She stood up, walked to the door, and flipped the sign to closed. "And fighters don't fight alone." Within an hour, the back booth of Cora's diner had become a war room. She'd made calls, quiet ones, and they'd come without question. Frank Rodriguez, 68, Marine Corps retired, built like a refrigerator despite his age. Luis Chen, 72, former Army intelligence, sharp as a tack behind those thick glasses. Charlie Watts, 70, ex-detective with the state police, still had connections everywhere. And Grant Peterson, 65, Legion brother and semi-retired attorney who'd handled every legal scrape any of us had gotten into for the past 30 years. I showed them the tape on Cora's ancient TV VCR combo that she kept in the back office for slow nights. We watched in grim silence as my marriage fell apart in grainy black and white. "Son of a bitch," Frank muttered when Colby's face became clear. That's the bastard who canceled the Veterans Day parade route last year. Said it was too expensive. Charlie leaned back, his detective brain already working. We need more intel. This isn't just adultery, Ray. If Colby's using his position to give Joni's event business preferential treatment, that's corruption. Ethics violations. Career-ending stuff. I can pull public records, Luis offered, adjusting his glasses. Every contract between the Parks Department and Joni's events. Every permit. Every payment. Grant nodded slowly. Ray, if you go in guns blazing, they'll deny everything, claim the tape's inconclusive. But if we're smart about this... He trailed off, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. We can hit them where it truly hurts. Reputation, wallet, career all at once. The park board meets tomorrow night, Cora added, refilling everyone's coffee. Public comment period. Lots of important people there. They kept talking, strategizing like we were planning a military operation.
And maybe we were, but I found myself drifting, thinking about tonight. They'd planned to meet again. Same key, same time. Ray? Charlie's voice pulled me back. You with us? Yeah, I said. But tonight, I need to see it for myself. I need to be sure. Understanding passed around the table. Charlie reached into his jacket and pulled out a small camcorder. Borrowed this from my nephew. Better quality than that ancient VCR. Whatever happens tonight, you'll have it in living color. That night, I told Joni I had inventory to do at the Legion Hall. She barely looked up from her magazine, just murmured something about not waiting up. The casualness of her dismissal stung more than anger would have. I got there early, found a spot in the storage room behind a wall of stacked chairs where I could see but not be seen, set up Charlie's camera on a shelf between Christmas decorations and old flags. Then I waited. At 11:07, I heard the service door creak open. My heart hammered against my ribs as footsteps approached. Joni's giggle echoed in the darkness, nervous, excited. I told you Ray's fast asleep by now. He's been passing out by 9:30 for years. Is that what she thought of me? Some old man who couldn't keep his eyes open past primetime TV? Colby's voice, low and confident. Good. I've been thinking about you all day. They moved into the storage room, not 10 feet from where I crouched in the shadows. In the dim light filtering through the window, I watched Colby pull my wife into his arms, watched her melt against him like she used to with me, decades ago. Watched him kiss her with a passion I'd forgotten existed. God, this is thrilling, Colby murmured against her neck. Meeting in secret like this. Joni's hands ran through his hair. I know. It makes me feel alive again. Alive. While our marriage lay dying, she felt alive. I must have shifted, because a mop handle scraped against the concrete floor. They both froze. My heart stopped. For a moment I thought it was over, that they'd find me there like some pathetic peeping Tom in my own hall. But Joni laughed, that throaty sound again, and pulled Colby deeper into the shadows. Just the building settling. This place is ancient. They stayed another 20 minutes. I won't describe what I saw, some things are too painful to relive, even now. But I got it all on tape. Every whispered endearment, every promise, every betrayal. Before they left, I heard them making plans. After the park board meeting tomorrow, Colby said, we'll have something to celebrate. I'm pushing through the spring festival contract for your company. Without a bid? Joni asked, and I heard the smile in her voice. Who's going to question it? I'm the director. They left separately, Joni first, then Colby 5 minutes later. Professional, practiced. This wasn't new. I stayed in that dark storage room for another hour, my legs cramping, my mind racing. The camera's red light blinked at me like an evil eye, holding the evidence of my life falling apart. When I finally stood, my joints protesting, I retrieved the camera and made my way out. The Legion Hall had never felt so cold, so empty. This place that had been my second home, my pride, was now tainted with their deceit. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the tape on the camera's little screen. The quality was better than the VCR, that was for sure. You could see everything, the passion, the planning, the casual cruelty of it all. Tomorrow was the park board meeting. Colby would push through that contract for Joni, thinking he was so clever, so untouchable. I started the truck and headed home to my empty bed and my unfaithful wife. But I wasn't the same man who'd discovered that first tape yesterday morning. I had allies now. I had a plan. And I had evidence. The town hall meeting room smelled like old coffee and disappointment fitting for what was about to happen. I arrived early, taking a seat in the back row where I could see everything. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in that unflattering greenish tinge that made even healthy folks look sick. I wasn't alone. Grant Peterson sat 2 rows up, briefcase at his feet, looking every inch the respectable attorney. Frank and Luis were scattered throughout the audience, just concerned citizens attending a public meeting. We'd agreed not to sit together, didn't want to look like a coordinated attack, even though that's exactly what it was. My folder felt heavy in my lap. Inside were copies of everything Luis had dug up over the past 24 hours. The man had worked magic, or maybe just knew where to look. Contracts between Parks and Recreation and Joni's events going back 2 years. Permit fees waived, venue rentals at mysteriously discounted rates. All with Colby Tate's signature. The room filled slowly. Tom Harrison from the hardware store, the Brennan sisters who ran the flower shop, other faces I'd known for decades. Small-town government meetings were usually dull as dishwater, but tonight felt different. There was an undercurrent, whispers behind hands. Cora's network had been busy, I realized. Not spreading the scandal, just suggesting that tonight's meeting might be interesting. Then Joni walked in. She wore her navy blue suit, the one she saved for important presentations. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like the successful businesswoman she pretended to be. She took a seat on the side, pulling out a leather portfolio and pen, every inch the engaged citizen. I watched her, this stranger wearing my wife's face. How many of these meetings had she attended? How many times had she sat there, playing the part, while working her schemes with Colby? Colby himself entered at 7 sharp, all confidence and pressed khakis. He glad-handed his way to the front, setting up his laptop for his presentation. When his eyes swept the room, they lingered on Joni for just a moment, a look that would have seemed casual to anyone not watching for it. But I saw the small smile, the slight nod. They thought they were so clever. Ed Lubbock, the park board chairman, called the meeting to order. Ed was 60, built like a scarecrow, and ran meetings like a drill sergeant. No nonsense by the book. He'd never been a fan of Colby's glad-handing style, which was why I'd hoped he was chairing tonight. First item, Ed announced, Director Tate's report on the summer concert series and proposed vendor contracts. Colby stood, smoothing his tie. His presentation was polished, I'll give him that. Budget projections, attendance estimates, community impact statements. He saved the contracts for last, sliding through them quickly, too quickly. And for event coordination, I'm recommending Joni's Events, who did such wonderful work with last year's spring festival. Mr. Chairman, my voice carried across the room like a gunshot. Every head turned. Joni's face went pale, then red. Colby's smile froze. Ed nodded. Mr. Hightower, you have a comment? I stood slowly, my old knees protesting. I do. As manager of American Legion Post 143, I have concerns about a potential conflict of interest involving the Parks Department. The whispers started immediately. Ed raised his hand for silence. Continue. I opened my folder, pulling out the first document. My hands were steady now. This was like walking into a fire, scary as hell until you were in it. Then training took over. According to public records, Joni's Events has received 5 contracts from Parks and Recreation in the past 18 months. Total value, $47,000. I held up the papers. None of these contracts went to bid. All were approved directly by Director Tate. Colby's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Those were time-sensitive situations requiring quick action. Really? I pulled out another sheet. The Spring Festival contract was approved in January for a May event. 4 months lead time. The city charter requires competitive bidding for any contract over $5,000 unless there's an emergency. I looked directly at Colby. Was the Spring Festival an emergency, Director Tate? The room had gone dead silent except for the humming lights. Furthermore, I continued, pulling out the crown jewel Luis had found, There's this fee waiver for the amphitheater rental. $1,200 of city revenue waived with your signature. The memo line says charity event, but the spring festival charged admission. That money went to Joni's events, not charity. Ed Lubbock leaned forward, his face sharp as a blade. Director Tate, did you disclose any personal relationship with the vendor when recommending these contracts? There is no, Colby started, but I cut him off. I believe Director Tate and Mrs. Hightower have a personal relationship that influenced these decisions. A relationship that violates Section 4.3 of the City Ethics Code regarding personal gain and preferential treatment. The explosion of whispers was immediate. Joni shot to her feet. How dare you, this is ridiculous. My company won those contracts fairly. Her voice cracked on fairly, and everyone heard it. Board member Patricia Williams, an accountant who could spot bullshit at 100 yards, spoke up. Mrs. Hightower, did you submit competitive bids for these contracts? The process was. Director Tate said standard bidding wasn't necessary given our track record, so that's a no, Patricia said flatly. Colby tried to salvage it. Mr. Chairman, these insinuations are completely unfounded. Mr. Hightower is making accusations without any proof of improper personal relationships. I have proof, I said quietly, and the room went still again. I didn't pull out the tapes, didn't need to. The threat was enough. But I think the financial evidence speaks for itself. I'm formally requesting an audit of all Parks Department contracts with Joni's events and an investigation into whether city ethics policies were violated. Ed looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Motion noted. Board members? The vote was unanimous. Even Colby's usual ally, Jim Brennan, voted for the investigation. The meeting continued, but it was like watching a play after the climax, everyone just going through the motions. When Ed finally adjourned, Colby shoved his laptop into his bag with shaking hands. Joni had already slipped out the side door, probably hoping to avoid the stairs, but I knew where she'd go. I took my time leaving, accepting a few quiet nods from folks who understood what had just happened. Grant squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Well done, he murmured.
Outside, the spring evening had turned cool. The parking lot was dimly lit, shadows pooling between the cars. I walked slowly to my truck, but I didn't get in. Instead, I stood in the shadow of the building, watching. Sure enough, there they were. Far corner of the lot, under the one broken streetlight, probably thought they were being clever. Joni's car was parked next to Colby's sedan, and I could see them both inside his vehicle. Even from 50 yards away, I could see Joni's animated gestures, probably furious about being blindsided. I moved closer, using the row of cars as cover. 30 years of sneaking up on kitchen fires had taught me how to move quiet when needed. Through Colby's rear window, I could see them clearly. Joni was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running. Colby gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. They were arguing, I could see that much from their body language. Then it changed. Joni's hand reached out, touched his arm. The anger drained out of her face, replaced by something softer, needier. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and Colby, that son of a bitch, turned and cupped her face in his hands. Kissed her right there in the town hall parking lot, not 30 minutes after their corruption had been exposed. The arrogance of it, the stupidity, or maybe just the desperation of two people who knew the walls were closing in. I stepped back into the shadows as Colby's sedan pulled away with Joni still inside. Let them go. Let them think they were safe for one more night. Tomorrow, Jake Thompson would be conducting a surprise inspection at the amphitheater. The day after that, the city would freeze Colby's department budget. And the day after that. Well, I had plenty of days after that. Revenge, I was learning, was best served cold and in courses. Jake Thompson showed up at the amphitheater at 7 a.m. sharp, dressed in his official fire marshal uniform and carrying a clipboard that might as well have been a weapon. I was already there, having told Jake I wanted to observe as the Legion was considering renting the venue. Half-truth at best, but Jake didn't question it. He'd been my probie 20 years ago, back when I was captain. Some bonds don't break. The morning was crisp, dew still clinging to the grass around the outdoor venue. The amphitheater itself looked picturesque in the morning light white columns, red brick stage, those decorative strings of lights that Joni had insisted on for her events. Pretty as a picture, until you looked closer. Jesus, Chief, Jake muttered, using my old title out of habit. When's the last time anyone actually inspected this place? Records say 3 years ago, I replied. But that was a walkthrough, not a full inspection. Jake's jaw tightened. He took his job seriously, took safety personally. Every violation he found was a potential tragedy prevented. We started with the electrical. The first extension cord we found was daisy-chained to another, then another, a spider web of fire hazards running under the stage. Jake photographed everything, his face getting grimmer with each shot. The main electrical panel had been modified with extra breakers that weren't up to code, wires jerry-rigged to handle more load than they were rated for. This is criminal negligence, Jake said, not trying to hide his disgust. One overload, one short, and this whole place goes up. We moved backstage to the green room, that's what Colby's email had called it. The one Joni would be seeing on her laptop screen soon enough. The door was padlocked shut from the outside, a clear violation. Inside, more extension cords, these ones duct-taped to the walls. A space heater sat in the corner, its cord frayed and patched with electrical tape. Fire extinguisher? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Jake pointed to the red canister mounted on the wall. The inspection tag was 2 years out of date. He pulled it from the mount and tried the trigger. Nothing. Empty as Joni's promises. The support beam I'd noticed on my own reconnaissance was worse in daylight. Someone had tried to hide the damage with wood putty and paint, but the crack was visible if you knew where to look. Load-bearing, too. Jake ran his hand along it, shaking his head. This needs immediate repair. One good windstorm during an event. He didn't need to finish. By noon, Jake had documented 13 major violations and another 20 minor ones. His report would go to the city council, the park board, and the mayor's office. It would also go to the state fire marshal's office, triggering an automatic review of all city-owned venues. Ray, Jake said as we walked back to our vehicles. This could have killed people. How did it get this bad? I shrugged, playing innocent. Budget cuts, I heard. Colby Tate's been shuffling maintenance funds to other projects. Jake's face darkened. Tate. Should have known. That evening's emergency city council meeting was standing room only. Word had spread about the inspection small towns have their own internet, and it's called the grocery store checkout line. I sat in the back again, same spot as the park board meeting. But this time, I wasn't alone in my purpose. Half the town wanted Colby's head on a pike. Councilman Harris led the charge. 13 major safety violations. Director Tate, how do you explain this? Colby stood at the defendant's table, that's what it looked like anyway. His usual polish was gone, replaced by a sheen of flop sweat. Budget constraints forced us to prioritize. Prioritize what? Harris interrupted. What was more important than public safety? The summer concert series, the new playground equipment? You mean the concerts organized by Joni's Events? Patricia Williams from the park board had been invited to attend. She was taking no prisoners. The same company you've been funneling contracts to? Joni sat in the audience, trying to disappear into her seat. But there was nowhere to hide in that bright room with all eyes turning toward her. Councilman, I resent the implication, Colby started. It's not an implication anymore, Harris said. It's a pattern. Contracts to your girlfriend while the venues she uses fall apart. The word girlfriend hung in the air like smoke. Joni's face went crimson. Colby opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. That's when I stood up. Mr. Chairman, may I address the council? Harris nodded. Mr. Hightower, please. I kept my voice calm, professional, just a concerned citizen. As a former fire chief, I've seen what happens when safety is compromised for convenience. Best case, you get lucky, and nothing happens. Worst case. I paused, let them fill in the blanks. The American Legion was scheduled to hold our Memorial Day ceremony at that amphitheater. 1,000 people, including Gold Star families. What would have happened if that support beam had failed? The murmur that ran through the room was angry now. These weren't just violations, this was personal. I move for immediate suspension of Director Tate pending investigation, Councilwoman Chen announced. Seconded, 3 voices said simultaneously. The vote was unanimous. Colby was told to surrender his keys and city property immediately. Administrative leave, effective immediately, pending potential termination. But the evening wasn't over. Not quite. The Parks Department had a previously scheduled community presentation at the Legion Hall that night next season's recreation programs. I'd forgotten about it until that morning when I'd seen the schedule. Joni had volunteered to run the slideshow, probably trying to maintain appearances, show she was still a community player. I made sure to be there early, setting up the projector myself. The old thing was finicky, you had to angle it just right, and the connection to laptops was always sketchy. Joni arrived 30 minutes before start time, wearing different clothes than the council meeting. She'd tried to refresh herself, but I could see the strain in every line of her face. "Ray," she said stiffly. "Joni," I replied, matching her tone. We didn't say anything else. What was there to say? She set up her laptop while I adjusted the projector screen. Professional, distant. Like strangers who happened to share a last name. The presentation started at 8. About 30 people showed up, good turnout for a weeknight. Joni had put together a decent slideshow, I'll give her that. Pictures of happy kids at summer camp, seniors doing water aerobics, the usual feel-good stuff. Then it happened. She must have forgotten to close her email. When she alt-tabbed to change slides, there it was, blown up 10 feet wide on the screen. From C. Tate Parks, a City.gov subject. Tonight, 10 p.m. green room? The timestamp was from an hour ago. During the council meeting where he'd been suspended, Colby had been making plans to meet my wife. The room went dead silent. Joni's hands flew to the keyboard, but she was panicking, hitting wrong keys. The email stayed up for maybe 10 seconds, but it might as well have been 10 years. Everyone saw it. Everyone understood. Mrs. Patterson in the front row whispered to her husband, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Isn't that the parks director, the one who just got suspended?" Joni finally killed the projection, but the damage was done. She stood there for a moment, laptop in her arms, face flushed so deep red it was almost purple. Technical difficulties. I'm sorry. I need to. She fled. Literally ran out of the Legion Hall, leaving her laptop bag, her purse, everything. The crowd sat in stunned silence for a moment, then erupted in whispers. I calmly walked to the podium, picked up her abandoned laptop, and closed it carefully. "I apologize for the technical difficulties. Perhaps we should reschedule this presentation." People filed out quietly, but the looks they gave me ranged from pity to respect. A few of the old-timers patted my shoulder on their way past. They knew. Everyone knew now. I stayed behind to lock up, holding Joni's laptop. Her email was still open. I could see the notification light blinking. I didn't look. Didn't need to. I had enough evidence already, but I did notice the presentation she'd prepared, saved on the desktop. Spring Festival 2024. Proposal Joni's Events. She'd been planning to pitch another contract. Even now, even after everything, she was still working the angles with Colby. I locked the Legion Hall and stood in the parking lot, looking up at the stars. They were bright tonight, no clouds to hide them. Joni was probably at Colby's right now, despite everything, or maybe because of everything. When rats are cornered, they huddle together. Tomorrow, Grant would file the lawsuit against Joni's Events on behalf of the Legion. The day after that, the liens would be placed. By the end of the week, Colby would be terminated and Joni's business would be in ruins. But tonight, they still had each other. Let them cling to that while they could. I drove home to my empty house, Joni's laptop on the seat beside me. The red recording light of the old VCR blinked at me from the dashboard where I'd set it. A reminder of how this all started. 4 chapters down, 8 to go. The fire was well and truly lit now. All that remained was to watch it burn. The morning after Joni's email disaster at the Legion Hall felt different, cleaner somehow, like the air after a thunderstorm. I sat in Grant Peterson's law office at 8 sharp, watching dust motes dance in the sunlight streaming through his second-floor window. The place smelled like old leather and justice, if justice had a smell. "Ready to turn up the heat?" Grant asked, sliding a stack of documents across his mahogany desk. His eyes had that shark-like gleam lawyers get when they smell blood in the water. I picked up the top paper, American Legion Post 143 versus Joni's Events, LLC. The words looked so official, so final. 35 years of marriage reduced to plaintiff and defendant. The claim's straightforward, Grant explained, adjusting his reading glasses. Unauthorized use of Legion property, breach of rental agreement, trespassing after hours. The security footage shows them using the facility for personal activities. That's a violation of the Legion's Code of Conduct clause in every rental agreement. What about Colby? I asked. Can't sue him directly since he's not a renter, but the city will be interested in a municipal employee using taxpayer property for illicit purposes. I've already sent a courtesy copy to the mayor's office. Grant's smile was razor-thin. Additionally, we're sending a cease and desist to Joni's Events for unfair business practices, the collusion with Colby for those contracts. I signed where he pointed, my signature steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. This was it, the point of no return. But hadn't we already passed that when Joni decided to screw around in my Legion Hall? After leaving Grant's office, I drove to First National Bank, where Joni and I had accounts for 30 years. Tom Harrison, the branch manager, was an old poker buddy from the VFW. He listened to my request with a furrowed brow, occasionally glancing at the lawsuit paperwork I'd brought. "Ray, you understand I can't freeze her personal accounts without a court order," Tom said carefully. "I'm not asking you to, but the business account for Joni's Events that's linked to our joint assets. With this pending litigation, I'm requesting you flag any large withdrawals, protecting marital assets during legal proceedings." Tom studied the papers again. "I heard about the situation. Small town, you know." He sighed. "I can put a note on the account. Any withdrawal over $500 will require both signatures or a court order. That's the best I can do." It was enough. Joni would wake up tomorrow to find her business checking account essentially frozen. No way to pay vendors, no way to move money around. The noose was tightening. The next stop was supposed to be routine, just checking in with Luis about some Legion business. But Luis met me in the parking lot with intel that changed everything. "You need to see this," he said, handing me a printout. I was checking the equipment rental company's public lines. Joni's Events is 3 months behind on payments for their sound system and party supplies, nearly $12,000. Christ, what was she doing with the money? Luis shrugged. Living above her means? Keeping up appearances? Doesn't matter now. Grant can fast-track a repossession with this. By Thursday, 3 days after the email incident, the hammer fell hard. I wasn't there to see it, but Frank was. He called me from his truck, barely containing his satisfaction. "You should see this, Chief. Sheriff's Department just pulled up to Joni's warehouse with a flatbed. They're loading everything: speakers, projectors, those fancy LED lights she was so proud of. She's there screaming at them, but the deputy just keeps showing her the court order." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired, empty, like watching a house burn after everyone's already safe necessary, but nothing to celebrate. That evening changed everything. I was sitting in my recliner trying to focus on a baseball game when I heard Joni's car screech into the driveway. The front door slammed open so hard it bounced off the wall. "You son of a bitch!" She stood in my living room, makeup streaked with tears, looking like a hurricane in a navy pantsuit. "You're trying to destroy me!" I muted the TV, staying seated, staying calm. "I'm not trying anything, Joni. I'm succeeding. My equipment, my business. You had no right. I had every right." I set the remote down carefully. "You used Legion property for your affair. You took contracts through corruption. You destroyed our marriage. Actions have consequences." "Our marriage was already dead," she screamed. "You haven't touched me in years. You barely look at me. I was dying inside, Ray, and Colby made me feel alive again." There it was. The truth, ugly and raw. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. "If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me, could have asked for counseling, could have asked for a divorce. Instead, you chose to betray me in the most humiliating way possible. So this is revenge, destroying everything I've built?" I walked to the coffee table and picked up the VHS tape, the original one from that first morning. I set it down between us like a chess piece. This is justice. You want to know the difference? Revenge would be sending this to your clients, your friends, posting it online. Justice is letting the legal system handle what you've done. Joni stared at the tape like it was a snake. All the fight drained out of her. Ray, please. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Can't we just— No! The word came out harder than I intended. We can't just anything. You need to leave now. Get a lawyer. This goes through the courts. Her face crumpled, then hardened. You can't stand seeing me happy, can you? You bitter old man. You'd rather see me ruined than happy. I'd rather see you face consequences than skip away from the wreckage you caused. There's a difference. She grabbed her purse with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. I loved you once, Ray. I loved you always, Joni. That's the difference between us. The door closed quietly this time. Through the window, I watched her car pull away. I knew where she was going, to Colby's condo on Riverside Drive. Let her go. Let her find comfort in the arms of the man who'd helped destroy her life. Frank called an hour later. He'd driven by Colby's place reconnaissance, he called it, though we both knew it was just morbid curiosity. Her car's there, he reported. Lights are on. You okay, Chief? I'm fine, Frank. You need anything? Want some company? No, I'm good. Just tired. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. The baseball game played on, muted. Somewhere across town, my wife was in another man's bed, seeking comfort from the disaster they'd created together. Tomorrow, the lawsuit would be public record. By week's end, everyone would know. I picked up the VHS tape, weighing it in my hand. Such a small thing to end a marriage. Such a small thing to start a war. The phone rang again. Cora. You eating? She asked without preamble. Not hungry. That wasn't the question. I'm bringing soup. You're eating it. No arguments. She hung up before I could protest. 20 minutes later, she was in my kitchen, heating up homemade chicken noodle soup that smelled like everything good in the world. We didn't talk about Joni or Colby or the lawsuit. We just sat at my kitchen table, eating soup and listening to the crickets outside. Thank you, I said finally. That's what friends do, Cora replied, squeezing my hand. Later, after she'd left and I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't check it, but curiosity won. It was a photo, grainy, obviously taken from outside looking through a window. Colby's living room. Joni on the couch, her head on his shoulder, both holding wine glasses. The sender had added no message, just the image. I deleted it and blocked the number. I didn't need surveillance. I didn't need proof of what I already knew. Tomorrow, Grant would file the additional paperwork. The equipment was already gone. The business accounts were frozen. The war was well underway, and I was winning. So why did I feel so empty? The next morning arrived with a phone call that should have made me happy. Grant's voice was practically gleeful. The bride whose wedding Joni was planning just called my office. She's canceling the contract, citing inability to fulfill service obligations. Words spreading fast, Ray. Joni's events is finished. I stared at my coffee, watching the steam rise. Good. That's it? Good? Ray, this is what we wanted. It's what was necessary, I corrected. There's a difference. After hanging up, I drove to the courthouse. Not for any legal reason, I just wanted to see. The sheriff's auction of Joni's equipment was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and morbid curiosity got the better of me. Maybe I needed to witness the dismantling. Maybe I was just a masochist. The courthouse steps were busier than usual. Small-town entertainment at its finest, watching someone else's life fall apart. I recognized half the faces. Betty from the flower shop, Jim from the hardware store, various Legion members who nodded respectfully as I passed. The auctioneer was a fast-talking guy from the next county who didn't know or care about the drama behind the sale. Speakers went for pennies on the dollar. The LED lights Joni had been so proud of. They make any event magical, Ray. Sold for $50 to some kid who probably wanted them for his garage band. Then I saw it. Lot number 37. Folding chairs with the Legion logo. Chairs that had somehow ended up in Joni's inventory, probably from some event where the lines got blurred between her business and my hall. $50, I called out when the bidding started. $50 from the gentleman in the blue shirt. Do I hear 60? Silence. Everyone knew who I was, what this meant. The auctioneer's hammer fell. Sold for $50. I was signing the paperwork when I felt eyes on me. Joni stood across the courthouse lawn, wearing large sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. For a moment, our eyes met through her designer shades. Then she turned and walked quickly to her car. "Shame about all this," said a voice beside me. Cora had appeared, dressed in her Sunday best despite it being Friday. "Whole thing's just a shame." "You following me now?" I asked, trying to lighten the moment. "Had to pay a parking ticket." Pure coincidence. She watched Joni's car disappear around the corner. "She looks rough." "Not my problem anymore." "No," Cora agreed. "But it's still okay to feel bad about it. Doesn't make you weak, Ray. Makes you human." Before I could respond, she was walking away, her words hanging in the air like morning fog. That afternoon, I tried to focus on Legion business, but concentration was impossible. Every time I looked at the storage room, I saw them there. Every corner held a ghost of better times, when Joni and I had worked these events together, a team. Around 4, Grant called again. "Colby's pretermination hearing is Monday. City sources say it's a formality he's done. Also, Joni's business landlord is starting eviction proceedings. Seems she's been behind on the warehouse rent, too." Jesus. How bad were her finances? Worse than you knew, apparently. Living on credit and reputation. The house of cards was always going to fall, Ray. You just gave it a push. That evening, I couldn't stand being in the house. Too many memories, too much silence. I drove aimlessly, finding myself eventually parked across from Colby's condo complex. I wasn't planning to spy, I just ended up there like a tongue finding a sore tooth. Through the lit windows of Colby's second-floor unit, I could see them. Not clearly, but enough. Joni pacing, arms waving angry or upset. Colby on the couch, head in his hands. They were fighting. Good. Let them tear each other apart. Then the scene changed. Joni stopped pacing, sat beside him, her hand on his back, his arms around her. Even from a distance, through glass and growing darkness, I could see them clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck, which I supposed they were. I drove home feeling hollow. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Justice, consequences? But watching them hold each other, finding comfort in their shared destruction, it didn't feel like victory. The weekend passed in a blur. I threw myself into work at the Legion, fixing things that didn't need fixing, organizing things that were already organized. Anything to keep busy, keep moving. Sunday night, Frank called with news. Colby's moving boxes out of his condo. Charlie drove by and saw a U-Haul. Looks like he's getting ready to run. He's got a hearing tomorrow. Yeah, well, maybe he knows how that's going to go. After hanging up, I sat on my porch despite the cooling temperature. The spring evening was quiet except for distant dogs and the occasional car. This time last year, Joni and I had sat here together, planning the Legion's Memorial Day ceremony. We'd been partners then, or at least I'd thought so. When had it changed? When had she decided I wasn't enough? My phone buzzed, another unknown number. This time the message was text. "She's staying with him tonight. Thought you should know." I deleted it without responding. These anonymous messages, probably from well-meaning friends or maybe just gossips, weren't helping. I knew where Joni was. I knew what they were doing. Knowing the details didn't make it better or worse. It just made it real. The next morning, Monday, I woke to more news. The termination hearing had been moved to closed session. Colby would face the city council alone, no public spectators. But by noon, everyone knew the outcome anyway. Colby Tate was officially terminated from his position as Parks and Recreation Director. Luis called with the details. My source at City Hall says he didn't even fight it, just sat there, accepted it. They gave him an hour to clean out his office. And Joni? Saw her car at his place when I drove by. They're probably planning their next move. What move was left? Colby was unemployed and unemployable in any government position. Joni's business was dead, her reputation destroyed. They had each other, but what else? That afternoon, I was at the bank handling some Legion deposits when Tom Harrison pulled me aside. Joni was here this morning. he said quietly. Tried to withdraw from the business account. When we told her about the restriction, she made a scene. Had to threaten to call security. Was she alone? No. That Colby fellow was with her. He didn't say anything, just stood there looking like he wanted to disappear. I thanked Tom and left, but the image stuck with me. Joni making a scene in the bank where we'd opened our first joint account 35 years ago. Colby beside her, silent and diminished. Two people who'd risked everything for passion and were now facing the bill. That evening, Cora insisted on dinner at the diner. "You're getting too thin," she declared, loading my plate with meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "And don't tell me you're not hungry. Grief isn't a diet plan." "I'm not grieving." "Like hell you're not." She sat across from me, her own coffee untouched. "Ray, you're grieving the marriage you thought you had, the future you planned, the woman you loved. That's all worth grieving, even if she wasn't worth it in the end." "You really think she wasn't worth it?" Cora considered this. "I think she was worth it once. People change. Sometimes they change into people we don't recognize, people who can hurt us in ways we never imagined. Doesn't erase who they used to be, but it doesn't excuse who they became either." We ate in comfortable silence after that. As I was paying the check, Cora mentioned offhandedly, "Heard they were at the motel off Highway 12 last night, the one with the half-burnt-out sign." "Who told you that?" "Does it matter? Point is, they're spiraling, Ray. Together, but spiraling all the same." I drove by the motel on my way home. Couldn't help myself. Sure enough, Colby's sedan was parked outside room 7. The curtains were drawn, but light leaked around the edges. Were they making love, planning escape, or just holding each other while their world burned down? I didn't stay to find out. Some things were better left unknown. Tuesday morning's newspaper might as well have been printed just for me. The headline was careful, professional. Parks director terminated following ethics investigation. But everyone in town knew the real story. The coffee shop buzzed with it. The grocery store hummed with whispers. Ray Hightower's wife and the parks director. The scandal of the decade in our little town. I found the official termination letter had been copied and posted on the community bulletin board at the Legion. Someone's idea of support, I guess. Effective immediately. Ethical violations. Failure to maintain public safety standards. The language was bureaucratic, but the message was clear. Colby Tate was finished. "Saw Joni at the Save Mart," Charlie mentioned when he stopped by the Legion that afternoon. "She looked like hell. Hair unwashed, no makeup, buying cheap wine and frozen dinners. Don't need the play-by-play, Charlie. Just thought you should know." He paused. "She was wearing his college sweatshirt, Oklahoma State, too big for her." That detail hurt more than it should have. She was wearing his clothes now, living in them probably, finding comfort in his scent while her world collapsed. Wednesday brought new humiliation for Joni. I heard about it from 3 different people before noon. The Hearth and Home Club, the women's social organization Joni had been part of for 20 years, had sent her a letter requesting a leave of absence. Polite speak for, "You're out." Margaret Patterson, the club president, had the decency to look embarrassed when she ran into me at the post office. "Ray, I want you to know it wasn't personal. But with everything that's happened, the members felt." "You don't need to explain, Margaret. Consequences." "Yes, consequences." She fidgeted with her purse strap. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it." Everyone was sorry. Sorry for me. Sorry for the situation. Sorry for the small-town drama playing out in real time. But nobody was sorry enough to stand by Joni. Fair-weather friends, all of them. Though I suppose that's what happened when you betrayed the social contract. That afternoon changed everything. I was in the diner pushing food around my plate while Cora refilled coffee for the lunch crowd when Joni walked in. The whole place went silent, forks suspended midway to mouths, conversations dying mid-sentence. She looked exactly as Charlie had described, disheveled, defeated, desperate. She marched straight to where Cora stood behind the counter. "We need to talk," Joni said, her voice carrying across the silent diner. "I'm working," Cora replied evenly. "Please, just please, you're his friend. Make him stop this." Every eye in the place was on them. This was better than any soap opera. Cora set down the coffee pot carefully. Joni, you made your choices. Ray's making his. I can't make him do anything, and frankly, I wouldn't if I could. I've lost everything. Joni's voice cracked. My business, my reputation, my friends. Your husband, Cora added pointedly. You lost your husband first, Joni, by choice. So you're all just going to watch me burn? No, Cora said, her voice gentle but firm. We're going to watch you face the consequences of your actions. There's a difference. Joni's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought she might break down right there in the diner. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and looked around the room, meeting the eyes of people she'd known for decades. I hope you all enjoy the show, she said bitterly, then walked out, the bell above the door clanging discordantly. The diner stayed quiet for a long moment after she left. Then slowly, awkwardly, conversations resumed. Forks found mouths again. The world kept turning. You okay? Cora asked, appearing at my table with the coffee pot. Yeah, that was necessary. She needed to hear it, needed to understand that this isn't just about you and her anymore. It's about community standards, trust, basic decency. That evening, I got a call from Grant. Joni's filed for a continuance on the lawsuit. Her lawyer's claiming financial hardship, asking for time to secure new representation. She's firing her lawyer. Can't afford him, more likely. Ray, I hate to ask, but are you prepared for this to get uglier? If she's desperate enough, let her do what she needs to do. I'm not backing down. But privately, I wondered how much uglier it could get. We'd already aired our dirty laundry for the whole town to see. What was left? Thursday night, I found out. Frank called around 9. Chief, you're not going to believe this. Joni and Colby checked into that Fleabag motel on Highway 12, the Sunset Lodge. How do you know? My nephew works the night desk. Said they registered under false names, but it's definitely them. Paid cash for 3 nights. They were hiding. Running. But running where? You couldn't run from a small town's memory. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured them in that cheap motel room with its water-stained ceiling and threadbare carpet. Was this what their great passion had led to? Hiding in a roadside motel like fugitives? Friday morning, I drove by the motel. Couldn't help myself. It looked even seedier in daylight, half the neon letters in the sign burnt out, weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot. Colby's sedan was parked outside room 12, curtains drawn tight. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine idling, wondering what would happen if I knocked on their door. What would I say? What was left to say? In the end, I drove away without knocking. Some confrontations weren't worth having. That night, Cora and I went to the movies, her idea, to get my mind off things. Some action film with too many explosions and not enough plot. But sitting there in the dark, sharing popcorn like teenagers, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Normal. Just for a moment, just for the length of a bad movie, life felt normal again. Thank you, I said as we walked to our cars afterward. For what? For being here. For being you. She smiled, that warm smile that could light up a room. That's what friends do, Ray. Driving home, I passed the motel again. The no vacancy sign flickered weakly. Were they in there now? Holding each other? Planning their next move? Or just delaying the inevitable return to reality? My phone buzzed with another anonymous message. They were at the liquor store, bought bourbon, lots of it. I deleted it without reading it twice. These updates weren't helping. Knowing they were drowning their sorrows in cheap bourbon didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made me feel worse. Saturday came with rain-fitting weather for what felt like a funeral. The funeral of my marriage, of Joni's career, of Colby's future. All of it washing away in the spring storm. I spent the morning at the Legion, doing paperwork I'd been putting off. Around noon, Jake Thompson stopped by. Chief, thought you should know. That termination hearing, Colby apparently broke down. Started crying, begging for another chance. The council was embarrassed for him. Why are you telling me this? Jake shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. Thought you'd want to know he's suffering too. I don't want anyone to suffer, I said, and meant it. I just wanted the truth to come out. The suffering that's on them. But was it? Or was I the architect of their suffering, carefully orchestrating each move to maximize damage? The thought sat uneasily in my stomach. That evening, alone in my empty house, I pulled out our wedding album. Hadn't looked at it in years. There we were, young and hopeful, making promises we thought we'd keep. Joni in white lace, me in a rented tux that didn't quite fit right. We looked so happy, so sure. When had it changed? When had that smiling girl become someone capable of betrayal? When had I become someone capable of such calculated revenge? The rain continued through the night, drumming on the roof like accusing fingers. Monday arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes you think new beginnings are possible. I was wrong. Grant called before my first cup of coffee. The city council made it official. Colby's termination is final, no appeals. They're also considering pressing criminal charges for misuse of city property. Criminal charges? Using the amphitheater after hours for personal activities. It's a stretch, but they're angry about the safety violations. Want to make an example? I stared out my kitchen window at the bird feeder Joni had insisted on installing 5 years ago. A cardinal pair was having breakfast, taking turns at the seeds. Even birds knew how to share. Tell them not to, I said. What? The criminal charges. Tell them I won't cooperate. Financial and professional consequences are enough. I don't want him in jail. Grant was quiet for a moment. You're a better man than most, Ray. No, I said, watching the Cardinals. I'm just tired. After hanging up, I made a decision. It was time to end this, at least my part of it. I called my own lawyer, not Grant, but Patricia Reeves, who handled divorces. Time to make it official. Standard divorce? Patricia asked, professional and direct. Division of assets? Irreconcilable differences? There's a prenup. Infidelity clause. Oh. Her tone changed. That changes things. Significantly. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The house mine. The retirement account's mostly mine. The savings mine except for a small account in her name. The prenup we'd signed 35 years ago when we were young and thought infidelity clauses were just lawyer paranoia was ironclad. She'll get her car, personal possessions, and about $20,000 from the joint savings. Patricia summarized. The rest remains yours. The infidelity clause is clear. $20,000. That's what 35 years came down to. Draw up the papers, I said. Tuesday afternoon, Joni was served at the motel. Frank's nephew called him, and Frank called me. She didn't make a scene, just took the envelope and closed the door. I'd expected. I don't know what I'd expected. Rage, tears, something. The quiet acceptance was somehow worse. Wednesday evening, she came to the house. No screaming entrance this time, just a quiet knock. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging loose. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with exhaustion. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I stepped aside. She walked to the living room like a ghost revisiting its past life, touching the back of the sofa, straightening a picture frame that didn't need straightening. You're divorcing me, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. The prenup. I'd forgotten about that. I hadn't. She laughed, bitter and short. No, you wouldn't. Ray Hightower never forgets anything. That's not fair. Fair? She spun to face me. You've destroyed my entire life, and you want to talk about fair? I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what you'd already broken. She sank onto the couch, her spot, the indent still there from years of sitting in the same place. $20,000, that's all I get. That's what the prenup says. You planned this all out, every move, like one of your fire suppression strategies. You planned your affair, same thing. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said quietly. Colby and I, it just happened. Bullshit. The word came out harsher than intended. You made a key. You met repeatedly. You took contracts, took money, took risks. Nothing just happened, Joni. You made choices. Every day you chose him over us. Because there was no us anymore. She stood, sudden energy flooding back. When did you last look at me? Really look at me? When did we last talk about something other than bills or the Legion or your goddamn routines? So you fell into bed with Colby Tate? I fell in love with someone who saw me as more than furniture. The words hung between us like a blade. If you were unhappy, I said slowly, you should have said something, should have left, should have done anything except what you did. I know. The fight went out of her as quickly as it had come. I know. But I was a coward. I wanted security and passion. I wanted to have everything. Now you have nothing. I have Colby. Do you? She looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just, a man who'd cheat with you will cheat on you, but I'm sure you two will beat the odds. You're such a bastard, she said, but there was no heat in it, just exhaustion. Sign the papers, Joni. Let's end this cleanly. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for loving Colby, but for how it happened. For hurting you. I know. Do you? Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. Maybe. Someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean trusting, doesn't mean taking you back. She nodded, tears finally coming. I know. I wish things were different. So do I. After she left, I sat in the dark for a long time. The house felt emptier than ever, but also cleaner somehow, like after a fever breaks. Thursday was the signing. We met at Patricia's office neutral ground. Colby drove Joni, but he stayed in the car. Through the window, I could see him slumped in the driver's seat, looking like he'd aged 10 years in as many days. Joni signed everything without argument. When it came to the final signature, the one that would officially end our marriage, her hand trembled. This is it, she said, pen hovering. 35 years, and this is it. Yes. She signed quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Then she stood, gathered her purse, and walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned back. I hope you find happiness, Ray. Real happiness. You deserve it. You too, I said, and almost meant it. I watched from the window as she got into Colby's car. She was crying. He pulled her into an embrace, holding her while she sobbed against his shoulder. Then he kissed her soft, desperate, like trying to hold water in your hands. They drove away, and I knew somehow it was the last time I'd see them together. Frank called that night. Colby's packing up, really leaving this time. Saw him loading his car. Where's he going? Heard he got a job offer in Kansas. Some private company, managing corporate retreats or something. Major pay cut, but it's work. And Joni? Don't know. Haven't seen her. Friday morning, I found out. Another anonymous text, but this one I was grateful for. Colby left, alone, left Joni a note at the motel. So that was it. When things got too hard, too real, too expensive, Colby ran. Left Joni with nothing but a note and broken promises. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sick. I drove by the motel one last time. Joni's car was still there, alone in the parking lot. The door to room 12 was open, maid's cart outside. She'd checked out. That afternoon, Cora found me sitting on the Legion Hall steps, staring at nothing. Heard Colby skip town, she said, sitting beside me. Yeah. Joni? Don't know, don't care. Liar. I looked at her. Okay, I care a little. She was my wife for 35 years. You don't just stop caring. No, Cora agreed. You don't. But you do move forward. How? She took my hand, her fingers warm and steady. One day at a time, one step at a time, with friends who care about you. Is that what we are? Friends. She smiled, that warm smile that could chase away shadows. For now. Ask me again in a few months. We sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere Colby was driving toward his new life. Somewhere Joni was facing the ruins of hers. And here I was, sitting with Cora, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Possibility. The war was over. Nobody had really won, but the fighting was done. Time to rebuild. Want to get dinner? Cora asked. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We walked to her diner, hand in hand like teenagers. Behind us, the Legion Hall stood solid and unchanged, a monument to permanence in a world of broken promises. Ahead of us, the future waited uncertain but no longer empty. Part 2 was finished. But somehow I knew part 3 was just beginning. 3 weeks after signing those divorce papers, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not the dark, calculated purpose of revenge, but something cleaner. Like the first day back at the firehouse after recovering from smoke inhalation, your lungs finally clear, ready to do some good again. The settlement money from Joni's events had hit the Legion's account. $15,000, not much considering everything, but enough. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, staring at the bank statement. Blood money, some might call it. I preferred to think of it as fertilizer, something ugly that could help beauty grow. "You're up early," Cora said from my doorway. She'd taken to checking on me mornings before opening the diner, bringing fresh muffins or just making sure I hadn't drowned in my own bitterness. Today she wore a yellow sundress that made her look 10 years younger, though the concern in her eyes aged her right back. "Couldn't sleep. Got an idea." She poured herself coffee. She knew where everything was now and sat across from me. "Good idea or another revenge plot?" "Good, I think." I pushed the bank statement toward her. "Want to set up a scholarship fund for kids wanting to become firefighters or EMTs. Turn this mess into something positive." Cora's face softened. She reached across the table, taking my hand. "Ray Hightower, you're a good man." "Am I? After everything I did?" "You revealed the truth. You didn't create it." Her thumb traced circles on my palm. "There's a difference between justice and cruelty. You walked that line, but you never crossed it." That afternoon, I met with Patricia Williams from the City Council. She was also on the Community Foundation Board. We hammered out the details for the Ray Hightower Volunteer Firefighter Training Scholarship. I insisted my name not be on it, but Patricia overruled me. "You've earned the right to have something good attached to your name," she said firmly. The announcement would be in next week's paper. A small ceremony at the firehouse. Something positive for the town to talk about instead of the scandal. Meanwhile, across town, Joni was learning what life looked like at the bottom. I heard about it from Frank, who'd heard from his wife, who'd seen her at Party Palace, the discount party supply store 2 towns over. Joni behind the register, wearing a polyester vest with a name tag, ringing up balloon bouquets and paper plates. The woman who'd once organized the mayor's inaugural gala, now stocking shelves with plastic champagne flutes. She looked rough, Frank reported over beers at the Legion. Hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, looked ordinary. Ordinary. That's what she'd been running from, I realized. The ordinary life, the ordinary marriage, the ordinary man she'd married. Colby had been her escape into extraordinary secret meetings, forbidden passion, the thrill of getting away with something. Now she was more ordinary than ever. "You feel bad for her?" Luis asked, studying my face. "I feel finished," I said, and meant it. Whatever happens to her now is her business, not mine. That evening, Cora and I went to the movies, her idea. Some romantic comedy I barely followed because I was too aware of her beside me in the dark. The way she laughed, throwing her head back. The way she'd grab my arm during the funny parts. The way she smelled like vanilla and coffee. "That was terrible," she said afterward, laughing as we walked to our cars. "Awful," I agreed. "Want to get ice cream?" "Ray Hightower, are you asking me on a second date when the first one isn't even over?" "Maybe I am." She smiled, that warm smile that could light up a coal mine. "Then yes." We drove to Maple's ice cream parlor, the place that had been there since the 50s and still had the original red vinyl booths. She ordered butter pecan. I got chocolate. We sat there like teenagers, stealing bites from each other's cones. "Can I ask you something?" Cora said suddenly. "Shoot. Do you think you'll ever trust anyone again? After Joni?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know. Trust is like a bone once it's broken, even after it heals. There's always a weak spot. But bones can heal stronger at the break point," she said, "if they're set right." "Speaking from experience?" She nodded. "Carl cheated on me once, 20 years ago, with his secretary because apparently men have no imagination." This was news. Carl and Cora had seemed solid as granite. "We worked through it," she continued. "Counseling, lots of tears, lots of yelling, but we came out stronger. He never strayed again, and I learned to trust again. It's possible, Ray, if you want it to be. What if I'm too old to change? Bullshit. You're never too old to choose happiness. When I walked her to her car later, something shifted in the air between us. The friendly concern that had defined our relationship for months suddenly felt charged with possibility. Thank you, I said. For everything. For being there. For calling me on my crap. For the ice cream. That's what friends do. Is that what we are? Friends? She looked up at me, and in the yellow streetlight I could see her weighing her words. For now. I leaned down when had she gotten so close, and kissed her cheek. Soft, barely there, but she turned at the last second and caught the corner of my mouth with hers. We froze like that for a moment, neither pulling away nor pressing forward. Good night, Ray, she whispered. Good night, Cora. I watched her drive away, my lips still tingling. Behind me, the ice cream parlor's neon sign buzzed and flickered. Above, stars were just becoming visible as the day finally gave up its hold on the sky. That night I couldn't sleep again, but for different reasons. Not anger, not plotting, not revenge. Hope. It sat in my chest like a small bird, fragile and fluttering, but definitely alive. The next morning's paper had a small item in the business section. Colby Tate, former parks director, has accepted a position with Midwest Corporate Retreats in Kansas City. So he'd landed on his feet. Good for him. Or not. I found I didn't care either way. But Joni would care. She was still here, still tied to this town by poverty and shame, while Colby was starting fresh 500 miles away. Had he even told her? Or had she found out like everyone else from the morning paper? Frank called an hour later. Drove by that duplex Joni's renting. Colby's car isn't there. Hasn't been for days. Not our business, Frank. No, but thought you should know. I did need to know, though I couldn't say why. Maybe because the last thread of their grand passion was about to snap, and some part of me needed to witness the final unraveling. That afternoon, I had to drop off some paperwork at the courthouse. Pure coincidence that I drove past Joni's duplex on the way back. The place was a step above condemned peeling paint, overgrown yard, one window patched with cardboard. Her car sat alone in the cracked driveway. As I passed, I saw her through the front window, sitting on a couch, holding something, a phone, maybe, or a letter. Her shoulders were shaking, crying, alone, in a rundown duplex while somewhere in Kansas, Colby was probably setting up his new apartment, planning his new life, forgetting her already. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, but that image stayed with me, Joni alone with the wreckage of her choices. That evening at the Legion, I announced the scholarship fund to the members present. They applauded, patted my back, bought me beers, but I kept thinking about that bird in my chest, the one made of hope. It was still there, still fluttering. You okay, Chief? Charlie asked. You look distracted. Just thinking about the future. That's new. A few weeks ago, you were all about the past. Things change. Yeah, he said, glancing toward the door where Cora had just walked in with a tray of sandwiches for the meeting. They do. Cora caught my eye and smiled. That bird in my chest did a little loop-de-loop. Things change. People fail us. Dreams die. But sometimes, if you're lucky and patient and willing to risk it, something new grows from the ashes. Phoenix rising, they call it. I was ready to rise. Summer settled over our town like a warm blanket, and with it came a kind of collective amnesia about the spring's drama. The park board scandal became old news. Colby Tate's name stopped coming up at the coffee shop. Even Joni's fall from grace ceased to be interesting gossip. Small towns have short memories when newer scandals arrive, and Tom Bradley getting caught with his neighbor's wife provided fresh material. I'd settled into a new routine, mornings at the diner with Cora before she opened, afternoons handling Legion business or working on the scholarship fund. Evenings were for us sometimes dinner, sometimes just walking around the lake, talking about everything and nothing. People are starting to notice, Cora mentioned one July evening as we sat on her porch swing, watching fireflies dance in her garden. Let them. It doesn't bother you? People talking? They talked when Joni humiliated me. At least now they're talking about something good. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We'd gotten comfortable with these small intimacies, holding hands, casual touches, the occasional kiss that left us both breathless and careful. Neither of us wanted to rush. We'd both been hurt before, both knew the cost of moving too fast. "My daughter called yesterday," she said, "from Seattle. Wants to know when she gets to meet my new gentleman friend." Is that what I am? Among other things. Such as? She tilted her face up toward mine. My best friend, my morning coffee partner, the person who makes me laugh when I want to cry, the man who restored my faith that good ones still exist. Cora. And, she continued, her eyes twinkling, the worst dance partner at the Legion Hall. Hey, I'm not that bad. Ray, you stepped on my feet 3 times at the 4th of July dance. Twice. The 3rd time was your fault for not moving fast enough. We laughed, and I pulled her closer. This was what I'd been missing all those years with Joni, not just the comfort, but the joy, the easy laughter, the gentle teasing, the sense that being together made everything else bearable. The next morning brought unexpected news. The new parks director, a sharp young woman named Sandra Martinez, called to thank me personally. The improvements we've made to the amphitheater are thanks to you, Mr. Hightower. Your willingness to speak up saved lives. Just did what needed doing. Well, we're having a rededication ceremony next week. New safety equipment, upgraded electrical, structural repairs all complete. We'd be honored if you'd cut the ribbon. I almost said no. But then I thought about it returning to the place where Colby's negligence had been exposed, but for something positive. Full circle. I'll be there. That afternoon, Luis stopped by with intelligence I hadn't asked for. Joni's working doubles at Party Palace, he said. Also picked up evening shifts at a grocery store, barely keeping her head above water. Why are you telling me this? Because whether you want to admit it or not, you still care. Not about her, maybe, but about the human being suffering. It's who you are, Ray. You save people, even the ones who don't deserve it. She made her choices. She did, and she's paying for them. The question is, how long does someone pay? When is the debt settled? I didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, I ran into Joni at the gas station. First time we'd been face to face since the divorce. She was pumping gas into her beat-up Honda, wearing the Party Palace vest, hair pulled back, looking every one of her 58 years, and then some. She saw me and froze. I could have gotten back in my truck, driven to another pump. Instead, I nodded. Joni. Ray. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. I heard about the scholarship fund. That's a good thing you're doing. Thanks. And you and Cora. She trailed off, attempted a smile that didn't quite make it. She's good for you. Yeah, she is. An awkward silence stretched between us. She finished pumping her gas, twisted the cap back on. Ray, I know I have no right to ask, but did you know? About Colby leaving? Saw it in the paper. She laughed bitterly. Me too. That's how I found out. A text would have been nice, a call, something. I'm sorry. And surprisingly, I was. Not for my part in it, but for the human pain in front of me. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. I brought this on myself. She got in her car, then rolled down the window. Be happy, Ray. You deserve it. She drove off, and I stood there processing the encounter. The woman I'd loved for 35 years reduced to a stranger at a gas station. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt sad. That evening, I told Cora about it. How do you feel? She asked, studying my face. Like I'm watching the end of a movie I've already seen. Detached, I guess. That's good. That's healing. Is it? Sometimes I think I should feel more anger, satisfaction, something. You felt enough for a lifetime already. It's okay to be done feeling about her. We were at the lake, sitting on the hood of my truck, watching the sunset paint the water gold and orange. She was wearing one of my flannel shirts over her dress, and seeing her in my clothes did something to my chest I couldn't quite name. Can I tell you something? She asked. Always. I'm falling for you, Ray Hightower. Have been for a while now. And it scares the hell out of me because I know you're still healing, still figuring out who you are without her. But I wanted you to know. I turned to face her fully. This woman who'd stood by me through the worst period of my life, who'd seen me at my lowest and still thought I was worth caring about. "I'm falling for you too," I said. "Already fell, actually, just been too scared to admit it." "Scared of what?" "Of ruining it, of not being enough, of discovering I don't know how to love anymore." She cupped my face in her hands. "You love that scholarship fund. You love your Legion brothers. You love this town despite everything. Ray, you never stopped knowing how to love. You just stopped believing you deserved it in return." I kissed her then, really kissed her, not carefully or hesitantly, but with everything I had. She kissed me back the same way, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us, just this. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled. "So what now?" "Now we take it one day at a time, build something real." "I can do that." "Me too." The next week flew by. The amphitheater rededication was a success. Half the town showed up. I cut the ribbon with the new fire chief, posed for pictures, shook hands. Sandra Martinez announced that the venue would now be called Safety First Amphitheater, and a plaque would commemorate the inspection that had saved lives. "That should be your name on there," Jake Thompson said. "No, it shouldn't. I had my reasons for calling that inspection, and they weren't all noble." "Doesn't matter why you did it. Matters that you did." Maybe he was right. That night, Cora and I went to the amphitheater for a concert, first one since the repairs. The community band played old standards while families spread blankets on the grass. Kids ran around with sparklers. It was Norman Rockwell perfect. "Hard to believe this is the same place," Cora said. "Everything's the same place. Just depends on what you choose to see." She squeezed my hand. "What do you see?" "New beginnings." As the band played Moon River, I thought about Joni and Colby. They'd met here, probably. Made their plans here. Let their affair bloom in the shadows of this place. Now Colby was in Kansas, starting over, and Joni was barely surviving, paying the price for choices that had seemed worth it in the dark. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was the woman beside me, humming along to the music, the scholarship fund that would help kids achieve their dreams, the Legion brothers who'd stood by me. The town that had welcomed me back from my own darkness. Clean slate, they call it. Wiping the board clean and starting fresh. I was ready for that. October arrived in a blaze of color, painting the maples around the Legion Hall in shades of fire. 6 months had passed since my world exploded, and I barely recognized the man I'd become, or maybe I'd finally recognized the man I'd always been underneath the marriage that had slowly suffocated me. The scholarship fund had awarded its first recipient, a young woman named Maria Santos, who wanted to become a paramedic. At the ceremony, she'd hugged me with tears in her eyes, thanking me for the opportunity. I'd held it together until I got to my truck, then sat there for 10 minutes, overwhelmed by the feeling that something good had come from all that pain. Cora and I were inseparable now. The whole town knew, and most approved. We'd gotten a few looks from Joni's former friends, but their loyalty had proven as shallow as their sympathy. They'd moved on to other dramas, other scandals. "You're going to wear out that ring box," Frank said, catching me fidgeting with it at the Legion one evening. "What?" "That bulge in your pocket. You've been carrying it for 2 weeks. Either propose or put it back in your sock drawer." He was right. I'd bought the ring nothing fancy, just a simple sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, but couldn't find the right moment, or maybe the right courage. What if she says no? Then she's an idiot, which we know she's not. "Ray, that woman looks at you like you hung the moon. Stop overthinking." That evening, I had my regular dinner plans with Cora. But when I arrived at the diner, she was dealing with a crisis the cook had called in sick, and she was trying to handle both kitchen and counter. "Rain check?" she asked, frazzled and covered in flour. "How about I help instead?" "You can cook?" "I can follow directions." We spent the evening working side by side, her calling out orders, me manning the grill. It was chaos, but good chaos. We moved around each other like we'd been doing this for years, anticipating each other's needs, communicating without words. By closing time, we were exhausted but exhilarated. "That was fun," she said, collapsing into a booth. "That was insane." but fun, but insane. We sat there grinning at each other like idiots. The ring box burned in my pocket. Cora! The door chimed. We both looked up, expecting a late customer we'd have to turn away. Instead, Joni stood there, looking worse than I'd ever seen her. Thin to the point of gauntness, clothes hanging off her frame, eyes hollow. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I know I shouldn't be here. I needed." "What's wrong?" Cora asked, immediately shifting into caretaker mode despite everything. Joni laughed bitterly. "Everything. Lost my apartment, living in my car. Lost my job at Party Palace because I missed shifts when my car broke down. She swayed on her feet. Cora was up immediately, guiding her to the booth. "When did you last eat? Yesterday? Maybe?" Without hesitation, Cora went to the kitchen, started putting together a sandwich. I sat across from my ex-wife, searching for words. "I'm not asking for help," Joni said. "I don't deserve help. I just wanted to apologize, really apologize, not for getting caught, but for doing it in the first place." "Joni, please let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "I threw away everything for a fantasy. You, our marriage, our life, all for someone who abandoned me the second things got tough. You were right about everything. I wasn't right about everything. I was just hurt. You were hurt because I hurt you, deliberately, repeatedly. And for what? Excitement? Passion? God, I was such a fool." Cora returned with the sandwich and a cup of soup. Joni ate like she was starving, which she probably was. "There's a women's shelter in Riverside," Cora said gently. "They have programs, job placement help." "I know. I've been too proud to go. Stupid, right? Pride is all I have left." "Pride doesn't keep you warm at night," I said. "Trust me on that." She looked between us, saw how we were sitting, Cora's hand naturally finding mine, the easy intimacy of two people who fit together. "You two make sense," she said softly. "You always did, even when I was too blind to see it." "Cora was more of a wife to you than I ever was, Ray. Always making sure you ate, checking on you, caring about your day." "Joni," Cora started. "It's true. I took him for granted. Assumed he'd always be there while I looked for something more exciting. And now look where exciting got me." She finished eating, stood to leave. "Let me drive you to the shelter," I offered. "No, I need to do this myself. But thank you, for the food, for listening, for not throwing me out." At the door, she turned back. "That letter I sent? I meant every word. Be happy, both of you. Show the world what real love looks like." After she left, Cora and I sat in silence for a long moment. "That was unexpected," she finally said. "Yeah. You okay?" "Actually, yes. Seeing her like that, it doesn't make me happy, but it doesn't destroy me either. Is that wrong?" "No, it's honest." I stood up suddenly. "Come on. Where are we going?" "For a walk." We ended up at the gazebo in the town square, lit up with fairy lights for the fall festival. The air was crisp, smelling of wood smoke and dying leaves. 40 years ago, I proposed to Joni here," I said. "Ray, I don't need to hear." "Yes, you do. Because that was a boy proposing to a girl, neither of them knowing who they really were or what they really wanted. Now I'm a man who's been broken and rebuilt, standing with a woman who helped put the pieces back together." I dropped to one knee, pulled out the ring box. Cora's hands flew to her mouth. "Cora Mae Jensen, you've been my friend, my anchor, my reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. You've seen me at my worst, and somehow still think I'm worth loving. I'm not asking you to marry the man I was, he's gone. I'm asking you to marry the man I've become, the one who knows what real partnership looks like. Will you marry me?" She was crying, nodding, laughing all at once. "Yes. God, yes, Ray." I slipped the ring on her finger, stood and kissed her as the town clock chimed midnight. A new day beginning. "Small wedding or big?" she asked against my lips. "Whatever you want." "Small, family and close friends, in your backyard under that big oak." "Spring?" "Spring. Full circle from when everything fell apart to when everything came together." We walked home my home, soon to be our home, hand in hand. The stars were brilliant overhead, winter constellations already showing their faces. "You know people will talk," she said. "Say it's too soon after the divorce. Let them talk. They don't know what we've been through. Joni might come to the wedding. I hope she does. I hope by then she's found her own fresh start." The next morning, news of our engagement spread faster than wildfire. The diner was packed with well-wishers. Frank ordered champagne for everyone. Even Margaret Patterson from the Hearth and Home Club stopped by with congratulations. "You two give the rest of us hope," she said, "that it's never too late for happiness." That afternoon, a letter arrived at the Legion. I recognized Joni's handwriting. "Ray, heard the news. Congratulations to you both. Cora will be the wife you deserved all along, attentive, caring, present. All the things I never was. I'm writing from the Riverside Women's Shelter, taking it one day at a time. Got a lead on a job at a nursing home, nothing fancy but honest work. Starting therapy, too. Turns out I have a lot to unpack about why I sabotaged everything good in my life. I won't ask for forgiveness, I know that's too much. But I wanted you to know that your kindness last night, after everything, showed me the man you always were. The one I was too selfish to see. Be happy, Ray. You've earned it. Joni. I showed it to Cora that evening. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "Like closing a book I've finally finished reading. Good book or bad?" "Both. Different chapters, different quality. But it's done now." She kissed me softly. "I love you, Ray Hightower." "I love you too, Cora May Soontoba Hightower." "Actually," she said with a grin, "I was thinking Hightower Jensen, hyphenated. Modern. Whatever makes you happy. You make me happy." We spent the evening planning our wedding, sketching out the future we'd build together. The past was done, filed away like old photographs in the attic. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility. New beginnings. We all get them eventually, if we're brave enough to let go of the old endings. Epilogue 1 year later. Spring came early that year, bringing with it the kind of perfect weather that made you believe in fresh starts and second chances. I stood in front of the mirror in the Legion Hall's back room, the same room where I'd first watched that damn tape 2 years ago, adjusting my tie for the 10th time. "You're going to strangle yourself," Frank said from the doorway. "Relax, Chief. She already said yes." "Different kind of nerves this time," I admitted. "Good different?" "The best different." Through the window, I could see the backyard transformation Cora and her army of friends had managed. White chairs in neat rows under the oak tree. Flowers everywhere, wildflowers. Nothing fancy, just like she wanted. The Legion brothers were already taking their seats, some using walkers now, but all determined to be there. 5 minutes, Charlie announced, poking his head in. "You ready?" "Been ready for months." I walked out to take my place, Bennett beside me as both best man and officiant. The small gathering, maybe 40 people, stood as the music started. My daughters, Sarah and Jennifer, walked down first, having flown in from Portland and Boston. They'd taken to Cora immediately, relieved to see their father happy again. Then Cora appeared, and everything else faded away. She wore a simple cream-colored dress, nothing elaborate, but she glowed like she was lit from within. Her smile could have powered the whole town. Luis walked her down the aisle she'd asked him specially, said she wanted a good man to give her to another good man. "You clean up nice," she whispered when she reached me. "You're beautiful," I whispered back. "Dearly beloved," Bennett began, then stopped. "Ah, hell, you all know why we're here. These two found each other when they needed it most. Ray, you got something to say?" I'd written vows, practiced them, but standing there looking at Cora, I forgot every word. So I spoke from the heart. "Cora, you saved me. Not from Joni or the divorce or any of that. You saved me from becoming someone bitter and closed off. You reminded me that love isn't about possession or excitement or secrets. It's about showing up every day, choosing each other even when it's hard, and finding joy in the ordinary moments. I promise to love you, to make you laugh, to dance with you even though I'm terrible at it, and to never take you for granted, not for a single day." She was crying, but smiling through it. "Ray, You showed me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. You showed me that trust can be rebuilt, that hearts can heal, that love can be better the second time around if you're brave enough to try. I promise to stand by you, to call you on your nonsense, to make sure you eat actual vegetables, and to love you fiercely and faithfully for whatever time we have left. The rings? Bennett asked. Maria Santos, our scholarship recipient, stepped forward with the rings. We'd asked her to be part of the ceremony. She was family now, in a way. We exchanged rings, simple gold bands, nothing fancy. Neither of us needed fancy anymore. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ray, kiss your bride. I did thoroughly to cheers and applause. Somewhere in the crowd, a camera clicked. The newspaper was covering it. A nice change from the scandal coverage of 2 years ago. The reception was in the Legion Hall itself, transformed with lights and flowers, but still recognizably the place where everything had started and somehow ended up here. We debated having it somewhere else, but Cora had insisted. That place is part of your story, she'd said. Our story now. We're not going to let bad memories own it. She was right, as usual. We danced our first dance to At Last by Etta James, Cora's choice, perfect like everything she did. I only stepped on her feet once. Getting better, she murmured against my shoulder. I had a good teacher. Halfway through the reception, I noticed someone standing at the back door, hesitant to enter. Joni, in a simple blue dress, looking healthier than she had in months. She'd sent back the RSVP saying she couldn't make it, but here she was. I nudged Cora, who followed my gaze. I'll go talk to her, Cora said. No, we both will. We walked over together, united front from the start. I'm sorry, Joni said quickly. I know I said I wouldn't come, but I wanted to see that good things can still happen, that people can rebuild. How are you? Cora asked, genuine concern in her voice. Better. 9 months sober. Turns out I was medicating a lot with wine. Steady job at the nursing home. Small apartment, that's mine. Learning to be alone and be okay with it. That's good, Joni. Really good, I said and meant it. I brought this, she said, holding out a wrapped gift. It's not much. We opened it later, a photo album she'd kept, pictures of the Legion Hall through the years, including some of me from my early days as manager. A history of the place that had shaped all our lives in different ways. She didn't stay for the reception, just wanted to bear witness, she said. To show that she could face what she'd lost and be happy for what we'd found. As the evening wound down, Cora and I stood outside the Legion Hall, looking at the stars. The same stars I'd stood under in rage and pain 2 years ago. Any regrets? She asked. None? You? I regret not doing this sooner. We weren't ready sooner, neither of us. Ray? She turned to face me. I know this is supposed to be the happiest day and all, but can I tell you something? Always. I'm scared. Happy but scared. What if we're just rebounding? What if I kissed her quiet? We're not kids, Cora. We know exactly what we're doing and why. This isn't a rebound or settling or any of that. This is 2 people who've lived enough life to know what really matters, choosing each other with eyes wide open. You sure? Never been more sure of anything. A car drove by, honking congratulations. We waved, laughed, held each other close. Ready to go home, Mrs. Hightower Jensen? Ready for everything, Mr. Hightower. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the Legion Hall, all lit up against the night sky. That building had seen the worst day of my life, and now one of the best. The tape that had destroyed my first marriage had led, in a twisted way, to my second. Pain had led to growth, betrayal to trust, endings to beginnings. Life was strange that way. You could plan and scheme and plot revenge, but in the end, the best things came when you stopped trying to control everything and just let life happen. What are you thinking about? Cora asked, her hand finding mine. How grateful I am. For what? For that old VCR breaking down, for watching that tape, for everything that came after, even the painful parts. Really? Really. Because it all led to this moment with you. She squeezed my hand. I love you, Ray. I love you too. We drove home our home toward our future. Behind us, the Legion Hall stood sentinel in the darkness, keeper of secrets and witness to redemption. Somewhere across town, Joni was probably in her small apartment, maybe looking at old photos, maybe just looking forward. And somewhere in Kansas, Colby was living whatever life he'd chosen. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was the woman beside me, humming along to the radio, the scholarship recipients we'd help, the years we'd have together, however many we got, the ordinary mornings and quiet evenings, and all the small moments that make a life. The Legion Hall tapes were finished playing. This was a new recording, and we were just getting started. The end. In the last light of day, the Legion Hall's sign flickered once and held steady, like a heartbeat returning to normal rhythm. Some stories end where they began, coming full circle. But the circle doesn't close, it spirals upward, carrying us higher than we ever thought we could go. All it takes is the courage to let go of what was and embrace what could be. All it takes is believing we deserve a second chance. All it takes is love, real, honest, everyday love. The kind that doesn't need secret meetings or hidden keys or stolen moments in storage rooms. The kind that lives in broad daylight and sleeps peacefully at night. The kind that lasts.